had been away from the spotlight for months, quietly building their next big move, and then the cameras found them. The streets of Park City, Utah buzzed with anticipation. A mix of filmmakers, festival goers, and die-hard paparazzi, all converging on one destination, the 2026 Sundance Film Festival. Among the sea of creative visionaries and celebrities, one couple instantly drew every lens, every whispered comment, and every heartbeat into focus: Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. But that night, it wasn't just about a documentary premiere. It was about protocol, ego, tension, and a single moment that would ignite controversy in ways no one could have predicted. Alysa Nahmias, the renowned documentary filmmaker, walked onto that red carpet and did something no one expected. She refused. She refused to call Meghan Markle by her royal title, Duchess of Sussex. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Imagine that. You're standing in the glare of thousands of cameras, the world watching your every move, and someone prominent, respected in your world, chooses to deliberately ignore the title that carries centuries of history, weight, and expectation. What would you do? Would you laugh it off, let it slide, or would every fiber of your being scream in quiet fury? Meghan Markle's reaction was subtle at first, but those closest to the scene later described it as a storm barely contained, a storm that would ripple far beyond the icy streets of Park City. This wasn't just about a name. It was about power, perception, and control. In Hollywood, titles don't usually matter the way they do in royalty, and in royalty, respect is everything. The collision of those two worlds was never going to be subtle. Harry and Meghan had been building a carefully crafted post-royal life, navigating the minefield of celebrity, media, and brand expectations. And they had chosen this festival as a stage to show the world what they were capable of. Their documentary, Cookie Queens, was set to premiere, a project meant to celebrate their vision, their voice, and their passion for storytelling. But in that moment, all attention shifted to a single, unanticipated confrontation. It started the moment they stepped onto the red carpet. Flashbulbs popped like distant fireworks, illuminating the couple as they moved forward. Harry, tall, composed, the picture of calm confidence, subtly shielded Meghan with his presence, walking just slightly ahead as if to take the brunt of the camera's attention. Meghan, wearing a striking emerald green gown that seemed to glow under the Utah lights, held her head high, eyes scanning, calculating, controlling. Every step was measured, every smile, every wave, a performance honed over years of public scrutiny. But then she saw Alysa Nahmias approaching, and the air seemed to shift. Alysa, known for her sharp insight and bold questioning in the documentary world, was not a person to mince words. She had a reputation for getting answers where others were too polite to ask, for cutting through pretense with a single pointed question. And she had just made one. She addressed Meghan Markle directly, without acknowledging her title. The cameras caught it, the microphones captured it. The whispers began. Some observers later described the moment as a blink and you miss it incident, but in reality, it was seismic. Meghan's posture stiffened imperceptibly, her lips pressed together, eyes narrowing ever so slightly. It was the kind of subtle tension that can speak volumes. Harry, ever attuned, leaned slightly closer, a small hand at her back, an unspoken gesture of support and caution. The exchange lasted only seconds, but seconds stretched like hours in the cold mountain air, until it was over, or so it seemed. What made it explosive wasn't just the act itself, it was the context. This was Sundance, a festival that thrives on collaboration, discussion, and art. It was supposed to be a celebration of storytelling, creativity, and vision. Instead, it became a theater for a clash of worlds. The meticulously scripted world of royalty meeting the unpredictable, candid world of Hollywood filmmakers. And somewhere between the flashing cameras and murmuring crowd, a narrative began to form, a story that would dominate headlines, online debates, and social media feeds for days. But let's step back for a moment. Why does this matter? Why should anyone care that Alysa Nahmias refused to call Meghan by her title? Isn't it just a word, a formality? Not quite. Titles, especially royal ones, carry centuries of symbolism, authority, and expectation. To ignore that title is to make a statement, intentional or not. And in Meghan's world, where every action is dissected, analyzed, and reinterpreted, ignoring her title was more than a simple oversight. It was, at minimum, a public slight, and at maximum, a provocation calculated to test her composure. Think about the pressure of that moment. For Harry and Meghan, this was their first major Sundance appearance. Their documentary Cookie Queens, a project months in the making, was meant to showcase their dedication to creative storytelling, their collaboration with talent, and their vision for independent film. Instead, the narrative had shifted. The story wasn't about the documentary anymore. It was about the tension, the snub, the look that spoke volumes, and the silent question hanging over the festival: how would Meghan respond? And respond she did, but not in the way the public might imagine. There were no overt gestures of anger, no dramatic speeches or confrontations on the red carpet. Instead, there was subtlety, a carefully measured control that would later fuel endless speculation. Observers would later describe her as fuming silently, a phrase that perfectly encapsulates the mix of indignation, restraint, and strategy that defined Meghan Markle in that moment. Harry's presence was stabilizing, protective, but even his calm composure could not fully neutralize the tension that had erupted in an instant. In the minutes that followed, whispers spread like wildfire. Festival organizers noted the incident, casting cautious glances, unsure whether this was a personal clash or a potential media storm. Photographers, sensing drama, angled for shots that captured the subtle reactions, the fleeting expressions, the small gestures that would tell the story once the world saw the images. And of course, social media was already alive with speculation. Fans debated, critics judged, and every comment seemed to escalate the situation. The red carpet had become a crucible, distilling a moment into a symbol of everything from Hollywood audacity to royal dignity. And yet, the tension wasn't fully visible on camera. It was a quiet storm, one that would grow over the course of the festival, spilling into interviews, panels, and private conversations. Those closest to the couple would later reveal that the moment left Meghan unsettled in ways that surprised even Harry. It was more than a slight. It was a test of composure, poise, and influence set against the backdrop of a public stage where nothing is private. So what really happened that night? Was Alysa's refusal a simple act of candidness, a statement about merit over title? Or was it something deeper, a deliberate challenge to the optics of fame and power that Harry and Meghan now navigate every day? And what about Meghan herself? Was her reaction measured, calculated, or genuinely emotional? These are the questions that set the tone for the entire Sundance experience, questions that the public would ponder, media would dissect, and insiders would recount in hushed tones. There's also the human element to consider. Beyond the spectacle, beyond the headlines, there were two people standing on that carpet, navigating worlds they had chosen to inhabit. Harry, protective, conscious of history and expectation, and Meghan, aware of every camera, every whisper, every potential misstep. And as the festival unfolded, as Cookie Queens premiered, and as the lights dimmed in the screening room, the ripple effects of that single moment, Alice's refusal to acknowledge a title, would continue to unfold, unseen by most but felt by all who mattered. And here's the twist. While the cameras focused on the documentary, on the red carpet glitz, and on social media speculation, an even more surprising story was developing behind closed doors. Festival organizers, filmmakers, and insiders all had pieces of the puzzle that had yet to be revealed. There were private conversations, off-camera gestures, and whispered warnings that would later paint the event in a new, more complex light. By the end of the night, what seemed like a simple snub had become the catalyst for a chain of events that no one saw coming. A chain of events that would challenge relationships, reputations, and expectations in ways that only Hollywood and royalty combined can produce. And so we reach the point where the story truly begins. Where does this tension lead? How did Meghan navigate the moment? What did Harry do when the cameras weren't looking? And perhaps most importantly, what will Alysa Nahmias do next, now that the world knows her refusal has sparked debate, intrigue, and speculation? The answers are coming, but not yet. What happened after that red carpet exchange, inside the premiere, and behind closed doors will change everything. And no one saw it coming. What does it feel like to step onto a red carpet when every camera is aimed at you? Every whisper in the crowd carries weight, and every glance is interpreted as a message. For Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, that moment arrived in the icy streets of Park City, Utah, as the 2026 Sundance Film Festival prepared to welcome them for the premiere of their documentary, Cookie Queens. The snow-crusted air was crisp, the lights of the festival tents glowing against the early evening sky, and the press line already buzzing with anticipation. But for the couple, the red carpet was not just a path to the premiere. It was a stage, a battlefield, and a mirror reflecting everything they had worked to build since stepping away from royal life. As they exited their sleek black SUV, the crowd erupted. Flashbulbs exploded like 1,000 tiny stars. Paparazzi angled for the perfect shot. Fans gasped and shouted, some cheering, some booing, all desperate for a glimpse. Every step Harry and Meghan took was calculated, measured, purposeful. Harry, in a sharply tailored midnight blue tuxedo, led slightly ahead, his posture protective yet confident. Meghan followed, her emerald green gown a bold statement that shimmered under the festival lights, every detail curated to project elegance, confidence, and command. It was a statement of presence, but beneath the surface, tension pulsed. They moved slowly, aware of the cameras and the gaze of every filmmaker, actor, and VIP lining the red carpet. The whispers began almost immediately. People speculated about the couple's first Sundance appearance. Was this a glamorous return to Hollywood life? A public assertion of independence? Or something more subtle, an attempt to redefine their image away from the glare of the monarchy? For those watching, the anticipation built like a taut wire ready to snap. And then, she appeared. Alysa Nahmias, documentary filmmaker extraordinaire, walked toward them with the poise of someone completely in control. Known for her fearless interviews and ability to disarm even the most composed figures, Alysa's reputation preceded her. Cameras followed her every move, and she approached Meghan and Harry with a purposeful stride. It was here, in this frozen moment on the red carpet, that the first real test occurred. Alysa looked Meghan directly in the eyes and deliberately ignored her royal title. The effect was instantaneous. Meghan's expression tightened imperceptibly. Her lips pressed into a thin line, eyes narrowed ever so slightly, just enough for photographers to capture the subtle, almost imperceptible tension. Harry, sensing the moment, positioned himself slightly ahead, an unspoken shield between Meghan and the confrontation. The moment lasted seconds, but those seconds carried more weight than many headlines could capture. Every observer, from journalists to festival goers, felt the tension. Something had shifted in the air. The cameras, of course, did not miss it. The red carpet footage, later analyzed frame by frame, revealed tiny details that told a story larger than words. The slight tilt of Meghan's chin, Harry's protective lean, Alysa's unwavering gaze. These gestures, subtle and fleeting, created a narrative that the world would dissect for days. Social media would later explode over them. Was it disrespect? Was it defiance? Was it a calculated test? Every interpretation added layers to the drama unfolding under the bright festival lights. And yet the tension was not only between Meghan and Alysa, it rippled outward, affecting everyone on the red carpet. Festival organizers exchanged cautious glances. Publicists murmured behind hands, unsure how to manage the optics. Photographers repositioned themselves, seeking angles that would capture both glamour and drama. Even fans in the crowd seemed to sense something extraordinary was happening, their whispers a low hum of speculation and excitement. As Meghan and Harry continued along the carpet, the couple's body language told a story of experience, composure, and silent negotiation. Harry subtly scanned the crowd for potential distractions or threats to his wife's calm. Meghan moved with deliberate poise, a practiced elegance masking a storm beneath. Observers later noted how Meghan's hand occasionally twitched, just a fraction of an inch, as if restraining herself from making an overt gesture of frustration. Every movement was a masterclass in controlled emotion. Yet the audience could sense the tension like static in the air. Questions began forming almost immediately. How would Meghan respond if the slight escalated? Would Harry intervene publicly or continue his quiet protective measures? Was Alysa's act a mere oversight, a personal statement about equality and merit, or a deliberate provocation meant to challenge the couple? These questions hovered over the red carpet like fog, adding suspense to every step the couple took toward the premiere venue. And then came the small but telling moments. A whisper exchange between Harry and Meghan, barely audible to anyone, but caught on a microphone. A quick exchange of glances between Meghan and festival organizers. Alysa's brief, pointed smile at the press before moving on. Each of these micro-interactions added layers to the unfolding drama, a narrative invisible to the casual observer, but palpable to anyone watching closely. The festival photographers, sensing something unprecedented, adjusted their lenses. They sought frames that captured not just glamour, but story, power dynamics, tension, emotion. One photographer later described the moment as watching a live chess game, where every pawn, every knight, every move is charged with intention. And indeed, the red carpet had become more than a path to the screening. It had become a stage where power, perception, and image collided in real time. Behind the scenes, festival staff quietly monitored the interaction, aware that any publicized tension could amplify into a media storm. Coordinators whispered to one another, debating whether intervention was necessary or if allowing the natural flow of interactions would suffice. The delicate balance between public spectacle and personal dignity was at stake, and even a small misstep could ripple into headlines worldwide. For Meghan, every microsecond was a negotiation of emotion. She had become adept at managing the gaze of cameras, the weight of public expectation, and the scrutiny of critics. But Alysa's refusal to acknowledge her title introduced an unpredictability that tested even her seasoned composure. Would she remain calm, allowing her presence to assert authority silently, or would she respond in a way that would escalate attention and risk misinterpretation? The answer, in those initial steps on the red carpet, remained a carefully guarded mystery. Harry's role in this moment was subtle but crucial. His protective instincts, honed through years of public life and personal experience, manifested in micro-gestures, a hand brushing near Meghan's back, positioning himself slightly ahead, scanning the crowd for potential disruption. He understood the optics of the moment, the silent messages sent through posture and proximity, and the importance of appearing composed while managing potential emotional flashpoints. The audience might not realize it, but these seemingly small interactions were the threads of a narrative that would later dominate headlines, social media debates, and festival commentary. Every step, every glance, every micro-expression was cataloged, interpreted, and transformed into a story larger than the couple themselves. And yet, for all the scrutiny, there was an undeniable tension, a mix of anticipation, anxiety, and strategy that pulsed beneath the surface of this public display. As they approached the entrance to the screening venue, the dynamics shifted yet again. Other filmmakers, actors, and guests moved aside, acknowledging the couple with polite nods and brief handshakes. Yet even in these interactions, subtle signs of tension remained. Alysa, now past the immediate encounter, had established a narrative of independence and defiance that hung in the air like a charged particle. The red carpet had become more than a ceremonial walk. It had become a prelude to a story about power, identity, and the collision of worlds. And as the doors to the premiere opened, the flash of cameras followed them inside. But the story didn't end there. In fact, it was only beginning. The red carpet had set the stage, introduced the key players, and teased the emotional and professional stakes that would play out during the festival. Inside the screening room, the tension would continue, amplified by the eyes of the industry and the cameras that now followed every move with a renewed intensity. But what the public wouldn't immediately see were the whispers behind closed doors, the subtle conversations between festival organizers, the private comments from filmmakers and press agents, and the quiet exchanges between Harry and Meghan that would shape their approach to the rest of the night. The red carpet was only the overture. The main act was waiting just beyond those doors, ready to test the couple in ways that no photo or headline could fully capture. The red carpet had made it clear. Sundance 2026 was not going to be a simple celebration of a documentary premiere. It had become a microcosm of the tensions between royalty and Hollywood, celebrity and artistry, expectation and reality. And while the cameras captured every smile, every pose, and every glimmering detail of attire, the true story, the story of control, perception, and unspoken confrontation, was just beginning to unfold. As the crowd inside the venue settled, the lights dimmed and the projector flickered to life. One question lingered in the minds of everyone who had witnessed the red carpet. How would the rest of the festival play out now that a single refusal to acknowledge a title had set so many forces in motion? And more importantly, what would Meghan do next? The answers were waiting inside, beyond the glitz and glamour, where personal dynamics and public scrutiny would collide in ways no one could anticipate. What does it take to stand in front of a Duchess of Sussex and say, without hesitation, "I'm not calling you that"? Most people would hesitate. Most would stumble, fumble, or politely follow the social script. Alysa Nahmias did none of that. She walked onto that red carpet, camera flashes bouncing off the snow, and stared straight at Meghan Markle with unwavering intent. Her refusal to acknowledge Meghan's title wasn't subtle, it was deliberate, calculated, and for many watching, audacious to the point of shocking. It all began as a seemingly ordinary festival introduction. Meghan and Harry were moving with controlled elegance, aware of every shutter click, every murmur in the crowd. Alysa approached, smiling politely, and extended her hand in greeting. But when the formalities of royal address came into play, she paused. She did not say, "Your Royal Highness" or "Duchess." Instead, she addressed Meghan simply as Meghan. The word hung in the air, light yet loaded, as if carrying a challenge invisible to anyone but the couple. Observers later described the tension as instantaneous. Meghan's lips pressed together, her posture stiffening in that familiar display of controlled composure. Harry, sensing the subtle storm, positioned himself slightly ahead, offering protection without interrupting the exchange. Onlookers might have assumed it was a minor oversight, but insiders later revealed that this was anything but accidental. Alysa Nahmias had earned a reputation for fearless candor in the documentary world. She knew exactly what she was doing. The act of refusing to acknowledge Meghan's title did more than just skip a formality. It challenged the very framework of royal presence in a Hollywood-dominated environment. Sundance is a festival built on creativity, candor, and occasionally confrontation. Alysa's refusal was a collision of two worlds: the strict, codified rules of royalty and the unpredictable, merit-driven hierarchy of Hollywood filmmaking. Some festival-goers described the moment as watching ice meet fire. Meghan, with every step measured, radiated poise and elegance, but beneath that, a quiet fury simmered. Every micro-expression, from the tightening of her eyes to the subtle tilt of her head, suggested she recognized the challenge, weighed it carefully, and was deciding how or if to respond. Harry's role in this exchange was subtle but crucial. Experienced in handling delicate public situations, he moved with precision. A hand grazed Meghan's back in an almost imperceptible protective gesture. His posture signaled to both Meghan and Alysa, "I see what's happening, and I am controlling this space." Harry understood that the public perception of this moment could spiral instantly. One misread glance could become a headline, a viral clip, a meme, and a debate across every corner of social media. But here's the twist. Alysa's refusal wasn't about disrespect, at least not in the traditional sense. She wasn't antagonistic. In interviews later that night, she explained that her approach stemmed from a philosophy she has long maintained in her filmmaking. Titles, celebrity, and status should not dictate the conversation. "I address people as people," she said. "The work, the conversation, the story, that's what matters, not what letters are in front of your name." From a rational standpoint, Alysa's approach made sense. She valued authenticity and candid dialogue. But for Meghan Markle, a woman whose life had been governed by both expectation and perception, the gesture felt like a public slight, a denial of respect in front of an audience trained to notice, record, and critique. And the audience noticed too. Cameras didn't miss the small, almost imperceptible twitch in Meghan's hand, the subtle narrowing of her eyes. Social media users who would later dissect every frame noticed it as well. Tweets, comments, and clips went viral within hours. Did Alysa just ignore the Duchess? Meghan fuming on the red carpet? Royal snub or Hollywood audacity? The line between observation and interpretation blurred instantly. Yet Alysa remained composed, almost serene, as though she had anticipated every reaction. Her reputation was built on moments like these, quiet disruptions that forced the world to notice, to reconsider, to question assumptions. And in this instance, the assumptions surrounding Meghan Markle about deference, titles, and public perception were exactly the assumptions being challenged. For Meghan, the experience was complex. There was the immediate, visceral reaction, anger, surprise, perhaps even frustration. But Meghan is also a strategist, acutely aware of optics and public interpretation. Her next move required balance, assert authority without appearing reactive, maintain dignity without appearing rigid, control the narrative without stepping into confrontation. And all of this in the midst of a red carpet buzzing with cameras, whispers, and invisible scrutiny. The stakes were high, not just personally but professionally. This was Sundance, a festival renowned for celebrating independent film and challenging traditional narratives. Cookie Queens, their documentary, was meant to be a showcase of Harry and Meghan's vision, a story about empowerment, creativity, and collaborative storytelling. Alysa's refusal to acknowledge Meghan's title, seemingly small in isolation, threatened to overshadow the documentary itself. It reframed the narrative. Suddenly, headlines would focus less on the premiere and more on the confrontation. Insiders later revealed that festival organizers were acutely aware of the tension. They had anticipated some level of intrigue given Meghan and Harry's presence, but Alysa's deliberate choice was unforeseen. Private conversations between coordinators and PR teams reflected a mix of admiration for Alysa's boldness and anxiety about the potential fallout. "We knew she was fearless," one organizer admitted. But this could spiral. Social media acted as an accelerant. Within minutes of the red carpet footage being released, posts exploded across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and emerging platforms. Analysts, journalists, and fans debated the meaning of the refusal, dissecting every angle, every glance, and every micro-expression. Some framed it as a power struggle, others as a misunderstanding, and still others as a bold feminist statement, one woman refusing to bow to the symbols of another's status. For Meghan, controlling the narrative was paramount. She understood that any overt display of irritation could be framed as overreaction, reinforcing decades-old stereotypes about her demeanor in public spaces. So she maintained her composure outwardly, masking the internal storm. Observers described her as fuming silently, a term that perfectly captured the duality of the moment. Intense emotional energy contained within a framework of disciplined presentation. And yet, the exchange was more than a simple red carpet interaction. It became a lens through which the entire festival, and indeed the world, could examine the intersection of royalty, celebrity, and media. How does someone accustomed to protocol respond when protocol is disregarded? How does someone used to public adoration navigate a deliberate public challenge? How does a filmmaker assert authenticity in a world obsessed with image? These questions would resonate far beyond that night in Utah, influencing discussions, interviews, and commentary in days and weeks to come. But the story didn't end there. As Alysa moved past Meghan and Harry, stepping toward the press and other attendees, the ripple effects of her refusal began to unfold. Festival staff whispered among themselves, wondering how best to manage the optics. Other filmmakers observed, some impressed by the audacity, others anxious about the tension it might create. Right. And Harry, ever aware of the stakes, subtly adjusted his position, maintaining a shield of protective presence while allowing Meghan to navigate the moment with dignity and strategy. It was a delicate dance, one measured in fractions of seconds and micro-expressions. The slightest misstep could have led to viral scandal or misinterpreted narrative. And in the world of Hollywood meets royalty, these moments matter far more than most people realize. One overlooked glance or gesture can become a global headline. One small refusal, one intentional slight, can redefine an entire event. As the couple continued along the red carpet toward the premiere venue, the tension lingered. Every photographer, every onlooker, and every member of the press seemed to sense it. Alysa's choice had transformed a routine introduction into a spectacle, a study in power, perception, and the nuanced rules that govern public appearances. Questions remained unanswered and hovering like winter fog over the festival streets. Would Meghan address it later in a private moment? Would the media misinterpret her composure as anger or as strategic restraint? How would Alysa respond to the inevitable commentary her choice would provoke? And perhaps most pressing, how would this small but significant moment shape the reception of Cookie Queens, the documentary that had brought them all together in the first place? By the time they reached the doors of the screening, the red carpet had set the tone. The stage was prepared, the players were in position, and the story was only just beginning. Behind the glittering facade of the festival lights, the real narrative, the intricate interplay of power, ego, and strategy, was ready to unfold. And one thing was certain, Alysa Nahmias' bold move had left a mark that would resonate throughout the night, through headlines, social media debates, and private reflections alike. But the most surprising part was yet to come. As the lights dimmed and the first images of Cookie Queens flickered across the screen, whispers began to circulate of private conversations, subtle confrontations, and behind-the-scenes maneuvers that had gone unseen by cameras or the public. The red carpet was only the beginning, the opening act in a story that promised more drama, more. Even respected news outlets could not resist diving into the narrative. Analysts dissected the optics, considering not just the red carpet interaction, but the broader implications for the couple's public brand. Was this a minor incident amplified by social media, or was it indicative of a larger cultural tension, Hollywood casualness versus royal protocol, celebrity independence versus institutional respect? Every article framed the event slightly differently, adding layers of interpretation and emotional complexity. Meanwhile, publicists scrambled to manage the fallout. Harry and Meghan's team carefully reviewed footage, monitoring social media sentiment and media coverage. They analyzed which angles presented the couple favorably and which needed mitigation. In interviews that followed, strategic phrasing was employed, designed to redirect attention toward the documentary premiere rather than the confrontation. Every statement, however subtle, was crafted to maintain dignity, authority, and composure while countering narratives that painted Meghan as reactive or overly sensitive. Even within Hollywood circles, the incident became a topic of conversation. Filmmakers, producers, and festival attendees discussed Alysa's audacity, debating whether it represented courage, provocation, or a combination of both. Some respected her approach, admiring the ability to engage with someone of Meghan's stature without bending to expectation. Others were concerned that such defiance could set a precedent for public interactions, potentially escalating minor conflicts into headline-dominating narratives. And then there was the audience itself, the millions watching online. For many, this was more than a red carpet moment. It was a window into a collision of worlds, royalty navigating modern celebrity culture, Hollywood's meritocracy meeting centuries-old protocol, and the very public intersection of personality, power, and perception. Fans dissected every nuance, debating not just the act itself, but its implications for Meghan's influence, Harry's role, and the potential impact on their post-royal life. Within hours, a complex ecosystem of interpretation had formed. Analysts and journalists sifted through footage to extract narrative, influencers amplified clips to engage audiences, and ordinary viewers shared their opinions, each adding to the momentum. It was a perfect storm of media dynamics, a moment captured, interpreted, and magnified across platforms with unprecedented speed. Every new post, tweet, or story fed the frenzy, creating a cycle where anticipation, speculation, and interpretation fed on each other. But even as the world reacted, the couple maintained outward composure. Meghan continued to glide along the red carpet, her posture deliberate, her expressions controlled. Harry stayed close, guiding the flow of movement, protecting against sudden disruptions, and signaling calm to both his wife and those around him. The public display was flawless, but behind that composure, they were acutely aware of the narratives taking shape. They understood that perception was as potent as reality, and in this environment, one misstep could redefine the story entirely. The irony of the situation was not lost on observers. A festival designed to celebrate creativity, collaboration, and storytelling had become a stage for public speculation about etiquette and protocol. While the audience anticipated the premiere of Cookie Queens, the narrative had already shifted. It was no longer just about the documentary. It was about power dynamics, public perception, and the intricate dance between authenticity and expectation. Alysa's refusal had transformed a single greeting into a global conversation about respect, authority, and image. And yet, contradictions persisted. Public sentiment was divided. Some applauded Meghan's restraint, viewing her composure as evidence of strength and strategy. Others criticized what they perceived as a calculated performance, an overreaction to a minor social slight. Even among journalists, opinions diverged, some sympathetic, some skeptical, all contributing to the increasingly complex web of interpretation. The press frenzy escalated further when a short clip of the exchange was uploaded online. It showed Meghan's subtle eye narrowing, Harry's hand on her back, and Alysa's confident, almost unflinching demeanor. The clip went viral within minutes. Every major outlet ran the footage, accompanied by analysis, speculation, and commentary. Headlines varied widely. Duchess snubbed at Sundance contrasted with filmmaker stands her ground against royalty. Memes appeared, fan threads proliferated, and within hours the incident was dominating both mainstream and social media. Yet for all the noise, there was still uncertainty. The red carpet exchange had been brief, mere seconds, but the interpretations were endless. Was this a statement of independence? A critique of hierarchy? A simple professional choice? The lack of clarity only intensified interest. Human curiosity thrives on ambiguity, and this moment, small yet charged, provided it in abundance. Even as Cookie Queens began its screening, reporters continued to circulate commentary, teasing potential reactions from both the couple and Alysa. Social media speculation included everything from imagined dialogue to theories about behind-the-scenes tension, fueling engagement in a way no marketing campaign could. The incident became not only a story about a documentary premiere, but a case study in media dynamics, public perception, and the collision of celebrity and royalty. And here's the kicker. While the cameras focused on public appearances and viral clips, the real impact was happening in private spaces. PR teams, festival organizers, and insiders all noted subtle shifts in behavior. Guests were more observant, filmmakers more cautious, and even casual attendees sensed an undercurrent of tension that no public statement could entirely convey. What appeared simple on screen, an exchange of words, a refusal to use a title, was in reality a catalyst for ripple effects that would extend far beyond the festival. By the end of the evening, the press frenzy had achieved something remarkable. It had reframed the narrative from a simple documentary premiere to a complex interplay of perception, respect, and authority. Every glance, every whisper, every subtle gesture was scrutinized, discussed, and debated. Social media continued to amplify interpretations, memes, and speculation, creating a cycle that showed no signs of slowing. And yet, despite the chaos, one truth remained. Alysa Nahmias' bold move had fundamentally shifted the dynamics of the evening. It was no longer just about Cookie Queens. It was about power, identity, and the intricate negotiation between public image and private emotion. It was a moment that challenged assumptions, provoked discussion, and forced both the couple and the festival to navigate uncharted territory. As the night wore on, insiders hinted at private reactions, strategic conversations, and moments unseen by the cameras. Interactions that would shape not only the reception of the documentary, but the ongoing narrative of Meghan and Harry's public journey. What the public witnessed was only part of the story. Behind closed doors, the interplay of personalities, strategy, and emotion was intensifying, preparing for moments that no headline could fully capture. And so the press frenzy raged on, fueled by curiosity, speculation, and the human appetite for drama. Every article, every viral post, every shared clip served as a reminder that in the world of celebrity and royalty, one small act, a single refusal, a subtle gesture, can dominate the conversation. It sets the stage for confrontations, reactions, and revelations yet to unfold. The cameras may have stopped flashing, but the story was far from over. Every whisper, every speculation, every viral post was a thread in a growing tapestry of tension, intrigue, and drama. And as the festival continued into the night, Harry and Meghan braced for the next phase of the evening, the premiere of Cookie Queens, where private reactions, emotional stakes, and public perception would collide in ways no one could predict. The headlines were just beginning. The world was watching, and what happened inside the screening room, behind the polished smiles and curated composure, would escalate the story even further, testing relationships, reputations, and composure under pressure in ways no one saw coming. What happens when the world's eyes are no longer just on a red carpet, but inside a darkened theater where every reaction is magnified, every glance is interpreted, and every whisper could ignite another wave of speculation? For Harry and Meghan Markle, the premiere of their documentary Cookie Queens at the 22/6 Sundance Film Festival was supposed to be a celebration, a showcase of creativity, collaboration, and storytelling. Instead, it became something far more complicated, a crucible of perception, power, and tension that no one had anticipated. As they entered the screening room, the atmosphere was electric. Rows of industry insiders, journalists, and festival VIPs sat quietly, murmuring with excitement, their eyes flicking toward the couple. The room was dimly lit, the soft hum of anticipation blending with the muted rustle of programs and whispered greetings. At the center, Harry and Meghan moved with the poise and elegance they had honed over years of public life. But beneath the surface, tension lingered, like an invisible current running through the room. The seating had been arranged strategically. Festival coordinators placed Harry and Meghan slightly off-center, allowing photographers to capture wide shots while providing the couple with a sense of security and space. Their seats were flanked by filmmakers, producers, and select media representatives, people who could shape narrative, influence perception, and amplify the event through coverage and commentary. Every placement, every detail was intentional, designed to balance visibility with control. Yet despite these meticulous preparations, the echoes of the red carpet confrontation with Alysa Nahmias followed them like a shadow. The whispers from backstage and the subtle glances of festival staff reminded the couple that the public eye was not limited to cameras. It extended into every corner of the venue, into every conversation, and into the collective consciousness of those witnessing the event. Every reaction mattered, and every interpretation could spiral into headlines, social media frenzy, or viral clips within minutes. The premiere began with the dimming of lights and the flickering of the opening credits. Cookie Queens, a documentary co-produced by the couple, opened on the large screen, each frame meticulously crafted to convey creativity, collaboration, and empowerment. As the film unfolded, the audience leaned forward, absorbed in the narrative, yet always aware of the couple's presence in the room. Eyes flicked between the screen and Meghan's composed face, wondering if the tension from earlier would resurface. And then came the first unexpected moment. During a quiet scene, a subtle, deliberate action captured by the cameras, a gesture from Meghan, a glance at Harry, was immediately noted by observers. Some interpreted it as irritation, others as silent strategy. Yet it amplified the room's collective awareness of the couple's emotional state. The film itself became intertwined with the unfolding social drama, every frame a backdrop for speculation. The Q&A session that followed the screening intensified the stakes. Alysa Nahmias, seated nearby, asked questions with her trademark candor. But this time, the focus shifted to the narrative tension she had created on the red carpet. She inquired about creative decisions, artistic choices, and collaborative processes, but framed her questions in a way that subtly referenced the couple's public image, authority, and the intersection of their celebrity with their royal past. Every word, every inflection carried the potential to reignite media speculation. Harry and Meghan responded with measured poise. They navigated each question with the precision of experienced public figures, balancing candor with discretion, humor with authority, and openness with control. Their answers highlighted the documentary's intent, celebrating creativity, community, and empowerment while carefully sidestepping potential pitfalls that could escalate tension. Yet even with these carefully calibrated responses, the undercurrent of awareness, the memory of the red carpet snub lingered, coloring every interaction. The audience reacted with a mix of appreciation, curiosity, and subtle tension. Filmmakers whispered among themselves, journalists typed rapidly, and festival-goers exchanged glances, sensing that they were witnessing more than a documentary premiere. They were witnessing a delicate negotiation of perception, power, and emotional composure. The room was a microcosm of Hollywood and royalty colliding, where every smile, gesture, and pause was amplified by the collective scrutiny of those present. Outside the screening room, the press continued to work at a feverish pace. Journalists filed stories almost in real time, capturing not just the documentary, but the subtle tension that had followed the couple from the red carpet into the theater. Headlines began to emerge. Duchess composed but tense during premiere. Red carpet snub echoes into screening room, and Harry and Meghan navigate public scrutiny amid festival buzz. Social media amplified these narratives with clips, memes, and commentary spreading like wildfire. Inside the theater, the emotional spikes continued. Subtle contradictions emerged. Meghan's calm demeanor contrasted with fleeting micro-expressions of frustration. Harry's protective posture underscored both composure and concern, and Alysa's confident, unflinching presence added a quiet tension to the room. Every observer interpreted these signals differently, yet all agreed that something significant had shifted in the atmosphere. The premiere also revealed unexpected layers of irony. Cookie Queens, intended as a story of creativity and empowerment, now served as a backdrop for a very different narrative: the interplay of authority, public perception, and human emotion under extreme scrutiny. Audiences were engaged not just with the story on screen, but with the dynamics unfolding in front of them. The couple's ability to maintain poise while navigating subtle provocations and the persistent gaze of both media and peers became part of the story itself. And then, during a particularly poignant scene, a small but telling moment occurred. Meghan, leaning slightly toward Harry to whisper a reaction to the film, was captured on camera in a frame that would later be circulated widely. Observers later noted the combination of attentiveness, subtle emotion, and controlled expression, a perfect encapsulation of her experience navigating public life, personal feelings, and professional presentation simultaneously. It was a moment that humanized her while also highlighting the extraordinary pressures she faced. The audience's response was equally layered. Applause, murmurs of approval, and whispered commentary coexisted with a heightened awareness of the couple's composure and the narrative tension. Everyone in the room sensed the dual significance of the event, celebrating artistic achievement while witnessing the quiet drama of interpersonal and public dynamics. The premiere had become a stage not just for Cookie Queens, but for the unfolding story of reputation, authority, and strategic interaction. And yet, even amidst the applause and engagement, private conversations began to ripple through the venue. Festival organizers, staff, and filmmakers shared observations, speculations, and concerns. Questions circulated. How would the couple respond in private interviews later? Would the tension with Alysa escalate further? How would social media interpret subtle gestures and interactions in the coming hours? These whispers behind the scenes created a parallel narrative, one that intersected with public perception in ways both deliberate and unpredictable. As the premiere concluded and the lights came up, the duality of the evening was clear. On one hand, Cookie Queens had been received with interest, applause, and appreciation for its storytelling. On the other, the undercurrent of tension, the red carpet exchange, Alysa's audacity, the subtle glances and the whispers behind closed doors, had transformed a celebration into a complex, emotionally charged event. The festival had not just premiered a film, it had premiered a narrative of perception, authority, and human emotion under pressure. Harry and Meghan exited the screening room to a mixture of congratulations, questions, and continued scrutiny. Media representatives queued for interviews, festival staff monitored interactions, and fellow attendees whispered about the unfolding drama. Each step, each word, each gesture became data to be interpreted, shared, and amplified. What was meant to be a simple celebration had become a multidimensional story, weaving together the narrative of a documentary, the dynamics of public perception, and the intricate management of personal and professional composure. And then came the unexpected twist. A journalist, emboldened by the viral red carpet clips and whispers from inside the screening, asked a pointed question as the couple exited. The inquiry referenced Alysa's refusal to acknowledge Meghan's title, subtly framing it as a potential conflict. The words hung in the air, capturing attention instantly. Everyone in the vicinity leaned in, sensing that this was a moment that could ignite yet another wave of media speculation, social media commentary, and public analysis. The couple responded with calm precision, yet the underlying tension was undeniable. Harry and Meghan's measured answers deflected potential escalation, while asserting their professionalism and poise. Still, the journalist's question had set a new tone. The premiere had been about the documentary, but now it was also about perception, respect, and the collision of public expectation with private composure. By the time the evening began to wind down, one thing was evident. The premiere of Cookie Queens had exceeded expectations, but not in the way anyone had anticipated. The event had become a study in human behavior, public image, and emotional strategy. Every smile, glance, and whispered word carried weight. Every moment, public or private, contributed to a narrative that would ripple far beyond Sundance. The festival goers and media alike would continue to dissect every detail, while Harry and Meghan prepared for the next stage of the evening: private conversations, interviews, and behind-the-scenes interactions that promised to reveal even more about the tension, strategy, and dynamics at play. And just when it seemed the evening might settle, Alysa Nahmias leaned forward during an informal discussion in the lobby, her presence radiating quiet authority. She asked a question that no one expected, one that hinted at deeper conflict, personal reflection, and the possibility of a revelation that would change the story once again. The premiere was over, but the chaos was just beginning. And the next moments, behind closed doors, would challenge everyone's assumptions, force emotional responses, and test the couple's ability to navigate the delicate balance of celebrity, royalty, and human reaction. What happens when a question is asked that no one sees coming, yet everyone in the room feels its weight? That's exactly what occurred during the Q&A following the premiere of Cookie Queens at the 2026 Sundance Film Festival. The room, dimly lit and still buzzing from the energy of the screening, suddenly felt electric in a different way. Not the thrill of applause or cinematic tension, but a palpable sense of anticipation, of curiosity mixed with underlying unease. The session began, innocuously enough. Filmmakers and festival organizers were positioned at the front, ready to guide the discussion. Journalists scribbled notes, and camera crews adjusted angles to capture the subtle reactions of the audience. Harry and Meghan were seated front and center, composed, poised, and ready to answer questions about the film. Their presence was commanding, yet calm, a careful balance between celebrity allure and the professionalism required by their post-royal life. Then, Alysa Nahmias stood up. She had remained quiet through the initial questions, letting other reporters take the lead, observing, calculating. And now, she directed her attention to Meghan. The words were carefully chosen, almost innocuous on the surface, but loaded with layered meaning. She asked about the couple's creative vision, about their approach to storytelling, but she framed her question in a way that directly referenced Meghan's public image, the scrutiny she had endured, and the very real tension from the red carpet exchange earlier that evening. There was a brief pause. The audience leaned in, sensing the gravity of the moment. Journalists poised their microphones, cameras shifted, and Meghan, for the first time that evening, allowed a subtle flicker of emotion to pass across her face. It was a micro-expression, an almost imperceptible tightening of the jaw, the faint arch of an eyebrow, but to those paying attention, it spoke volumes. Harry's hand brushed gently against hers, a silent signal of support, reassurance, and caution. Alysa's question was not overtly confrontational, but it carried an edge that implied, how does one navigate authority, perception, and authenticity simultaneously? How does a public figure, particularly one who has left the constraints of royal life, maintain dignity in a world that constantly scrutinizes every movement, word, and gesture? The room seemed to hold its collective breath, as if aware that the answer could reveal not just the couple's approach to filmmaking, but their approach to the very complex world they now inhabited. Meghan responded with measured composure. Her words were deliberate, carefully balanced between candor and diplomacy. She spoke about the process of creating Cookie Queens, about collaboration, artistic vision, and the importance of telling stories that empower and uplift. Yet even as she spoke, subtle contradictions played across her expressions, a flicker of frustration, a moment of controlled exasperation, a brief tightening of her fingers in her lap. These small cues did not escape observers, who later analyzed them frame by frame, capturing the silent emotional tension that accompanied her carefully worded answers. Harry, meanwhile, maintained a calm yet vigilant presence. His posture was protective but non-intrusive, a shield without obstruction. He nodded at points, emphasized agreement where appropriate, and subtly guided the flow of conversation without overt interference. His awareness of optics, of timing, and of the delicate balance between support and overstepping was evident to those who observed closely. Together, their composure created a careful counterpoint to Alysa's probing question, demonstrating an unspoken mastery of public presentation under scrutiny. The audience reacted with a mix of curiosity, admiration, and tension. Filmmakers whispered among themselves, journalists scribbled furiously, and even casual attendees sensed the layers of complexity in the room. The question had transcended a simple inquiry about the film. It had become a lens through which the audience could examine power dynamics, authenticity, and emotional resilience in high-pressure public environments. And then came the twist. Alysa, in her follow-up, leaned slightly forward and asked about the intersection of public expectation and personal agency. Her words were crafted with subtle precision, inviting reflection without overtly challenging, yet hinting at the underlying tensions that had played out on the red carpet. The room reacted almost instantaneously. Murmurs, shifts in posture, and attentive gazes underscored the gravity of the moment. Meghan's response was deft. She acknowledged the complexity, speaking not just about her own experience, but about broader themes of autonomy, narrative control, and the importance of defining one's identity in the face of external pressures. She emphasized collaboration, mutual respect, and storytelling as tools for empowerment, subtly reclaiming the narrative that Alysa's question had provoked. Yet beneath her composure, observers noted a barely contained intensity, a reminder that even the most controlled public persona carries an internal emotional landscape that cannot be entirely masked. Harry's interjections were minimal but strategic. He offered clarifying points, reinforced Meghan's perspective, and maintained a supportive presence that signaled unity without distraction. Every gesture, every word, every nod was calibrated to reinforce the couple's poise, authority, and composure while managing the room's complex dynamics. The room itself became a participant in this unfolding drama. Each audience member, journalists, filmmakers, and industry insiders alike, sensed the tension and responded in kind. There was a collective awareness that the interaction was about more than the documentary. It was about perception, authenticity, and the negotiation of authority in real time. Some nodded in appreciation, others leaned in with curiosity, and a few scribbled notes with intense focus, recognizing the significance of the moment for both media coverage and social analysis. As the Q&A continued, Alysa's questioning maintained its subtle intensity, probing at layers that were both professional and personal. She inquired about the couple's motivations, their approach to challenges, and the way they navigated external expectations. Her phrasing walked a tightrope, balanced between journalistic inquiry and the provocation that had marked her earlier red carpet exchange. Each question served to highlight not just the documentary's themes, but the broader interplay of identity, perception, and emotional strategy in a high-stakes public setting. And then, just as the tension seemed to reach a peak, Alysa asked the one question no one expected, a direct, pointed inquiry about how Meghan reconciles her public persona with the private person she experiences internally, the collision of the human being and the icon. The room fell silent. Cameras captured every reaction. Observers noted a subtle shift in Meghan's expression, a flicker of vulnerability, a shadow of reflection. Harry's hand once again brushed hers, a silent anchor amid the scrutiny. For the first time, the Q&A transcended the usual film festival discourse. It became an examination of character, resilience, and strategy. Every person in the room sensed the stakes. This was not a simple dialogue about a documentary. It was a public negotiation of perception, a study in the management of emotion, authority, and image under intense scrutiny. The implications were profound. Headlines would emerge, social media posts would explode, and the conversation would ripple far beyond the walls of the theater. Yet even as the discussion unfolded, private dynamics remained invisible. Festival organizers whispered to one another, unsure whether to intervene or allow the conversation to progress naturally. Other filmmakers exchanged glances, speculating on the couple's reactions and anticipating how the media would frame the exchange. The room was a tapestry of observation, strategy, and interpretation, each participant contributing to a narrative that was part film discourse, part human drama, and entirely compelling. By the time the Q&A concluded, the audience had witnessed more than a discussion about cookie queens. They had observed a microcosm of perception, authority, and human emotion under the spotlight. Meghan had navigated probing questions with poise, strategy, and subtle assertion of control. Harry had reinforced composure, presence, and unity. And Alysa's boldness had ensured that the interaction would be remembered, dissected, and discussed long after the lights dimmed and the applause faded. Outside the theater, the press had already begun drafting stories. Headlines varied from praise for Meghan's composure to speculation about tension, from analysis of body language to commentary on strategic responses. Clips from the Q&A circulated on social media, generating debates, memes, and viral discussion threads. The incident had grown beyond the documentary, beyond the festival, into a global conversation about power, identity, and the delicate art of public persona management. And yet, even with all this attention, a final, quiet layer of suspense remained. Festival insiders hinted at private conversations, unrecorded exchanges, and subtle reactions that had gone unnoticed by cameras. These private moments, full of nuance and emotion, would later become the subject of speculation, analysis, and insider reports, moments that could shift perception yet again. The Q&A had revealed not just a discussion about a film, but a dynamic negotiation of emotion, strategy, and perception. It was a turning point, a moment that would influence not only headlines and social media, but the very understanding of how Harry and Meghan navigate the intersection of celebrity, scrutiny, and human reaction. And just when the audience thought the tension might subside, a whispered comment from Alysa to a colleague, barely audible but captured by a sensitive microphone, hinted at an even more revealing insight, something that even respected news outlets could not resist diving into the narrative. Analysts dissected the optics, considering not just the red carpet interaction, but the broader implications for the couple's public brand. Was this a minor incident amplified by social media, or was it indicative of a larger cultural tension, Hollywood casualness versus royal protocol, celebrity independence versus institutional respect? Every article framed the event slightly differently, adding layers of interpretation and emotional complexity. Meanwhile, publicists scrambled to manage the fallout. Harry and Meghan's team carefully reviewed footage, monitoring social media sentiment and media coverage. They analyzed which angles presented the couple favorably and which needed mitigation. In interviews that followed, strategic phrasing was employed, designed to redirect attention toward the documentary premiere rather than the confrontation. Every statement, however subtle, was crafted to maintain dignity, authority, and composure while countering narratives that painted Meghan as reactive or overly sensitive. Even within Hollywood circles, the incident became a topic of conversation. Filmmakers, producers, and festival attendees discussed Alysa's audacity, debating whether it represented courage, provocation, or a combination of both. Some respected her approach, admiring the ability to engage with someone of Meghan's stature without bending to expectation. Others were concerned that such defiance could set a precedent for public interactions, potentially escalating minor conflicts into headline-dominating narratives. And then there was the audience itself, the millions watching online. For many, this was more than a red carpet moment. It was a window into a collision of worlds, royalty navigating modern celebrity culture, Hollywood's meritocracy meeting centuries-old protocol, and the very public intersection of personality, power, and perception. Fans dissected every nuance, debating not just the act itself, but its implications for Meghan's influence, Harry's role, and the potential impact on their post-royal life. Within hours, a complex ecosystem of interpretation had formed. Analysts and journalists sifted through footage to extract narrative, influencers amplified clips to engage audiences, and ordinary viewers shared their opinions, each adding to the momentum. It was a perfect storm of media dynamics, a moment captured, interpreted, and magnified across platforms with unprecedented speed. Every new post, tweet, or story fed the frenzy, creating a cycle where anticipation, speculation, and interpretation fed on each other. But even as the world reacted, the couple maintained outward composure. Meghan continued to glide along the red carpet, her posture deliberate, her expressions controlled. Harry stayed close, guiding the flow of movement, protecting against sudden disruptions, and signaling calm to both his wife and those around him. The public display was flawless, but behind that composure, they were acutely aware of the narratives taking shape. They understood that perception was as potent as reality, and in this environment, one misstep could redefine the story entirely. The irony of the situation was not lost on observers. A festival designed to celebrate creativity, collaboration, and storytelling had become a stage for public speculation about etiquette and protocol. While the audience anticipated the premiere of Cookie Queens, the narrative had already shifted. It was no longer just about the documentary. It was about power dynamics, public perception, and the intricate dance between authenticity and expectation. Alysa's refusal had transformed a single greeting into a global conversation about respect, authority, and image. And yet, contradictions persisted. Public sentiment was divided. Some applauded Meghan's restraint, viewing her composure as evidence of strength and strategy. Others criticized what they perceived as a calculated performance, an overreaction to a minor social slight. Even among journalists, opinions diverged, some sympathetic, some skeptical, all contributing to the increasingly complex web of interpretation. The press frenzy escalated further when a short clip of the exchange was uploaded online. It showed Meghan's subtle eye narrowing, Harry's hand on her back, and Alysa's confident, almost unflinching demeanor. The clip went viral within minutes. Every major outlet ran the footage, accompanied by analysis, speculation, and commentary. Headlines varied widely. Duchess snubbed at Sundance contrasted with filmmaker stands her ground against royalty. Memes appeared, fan threads proliferated, and within hours the incident was dominating both mainstream and social media. Yet for all the noise, there was still uncertainty. The red carpet exchange had been brief, mere seconds, but the interpretations were endless. Was this a statement of independence? A critique of hierarchy? A simple professional choice? The lack of clarity only intensified interest.